I came to my daughter's for Christmas 2026, but she said, "Who invited you? This holiday is for family only. Leave." I silently turned around and left. The next day, I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had always believed that family was everything. For 67 years, I had lived by that principle, raised my daughter Sarah with love and devotion after her father passed away when she was only 12. Those were hard years, working double shifts as a nurse, missing school plays sometimes, but always making sure she knew she was loved, always making sure she had everything she needed. Sarah grew up, went to college, married Derek, and moved 3 states away to Connecticut. I understood. Young people need to build their own lives. I never complained about the distance, never guilt-tripped her about the infrequent visits. I called once a week, always at the same time, Sunday evenings, so I wouldn't be intrusive. I sent birthday cards, Christmas presents for the grandchildren, thoughtful little gifts that showed I was thinking of them. But over the past year, something had changed. The phone calls became shorter. Sarah's voice sounded distant, distracted. "I'm busy, Mom. Can I call you back?" She rarely did. When I suggested visiting, there was always a reason why it wasn't a good time. Derek's work, the kids' schedule, house renovations. I told myself it was normal. Life gets hectic. Everyone goes through busy periods. Then came the invitation, or what I thought was an invitation. "We're having Christmas at our place this year," Sarah had mentioned during one of our brief calls in November. She didn't explicitly say, "Come," but she didn't say, "Don't come," either. I took it as my cue. What grandmother wouldn't want to spend Christmas with her grandchildren? I planned everything carefully. I bought presents for Emma and little James. Thoughtful gifts, not expensive, just things I knew they'd love. I made my famous gingerbread cookies, the ones Sarah used to devour as a child. I booked a modest hotel nearby because I didn't want to impose by staying at their house. I arranged everything to be as little trouble as possible. The drive to Connecticut took 7 hours. I didn't mind. I listened to Christmas carols, imagined Emma's face when she opened her present, pictured James running to hug me. It had been almost a year since I'd seen them, a whole year. I arrived at their house on Christmas Eve just as the sun was setting. The house was beautiful, a large colonial with white columns and a wreath on the door. Through the window, I could see a magnificent Christmas tree, lights twinkling. My heart swelled with joy and pride. My daughter had done so well for herself. I rang the doorbell, holding the shopping bags full of presents and cookies. My hands trembled slightly, from cold or excitement, I wasn't sure. I heard footsteps. The door opened. Sarah stood there, her face frozen in an expression I'd never seen before. Not surprise, not joy, something else entirely. "Mom, what are you doing here?" The words hit me like a slap. I tried to smile, tried to keep my voice steady. "I came for Christmas, sweetheart." I thought dash dash. "Who invited you?" Her voice was cold, flat. Behind her, I could see Derek standing in the hallway, his arms crossed. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just stared. "You mentioned you were having Christmas here, so I thought—" "This holiday is for family only," Sarah said, her hand still on the door, blocking my entry. "Immediate family. You need to leave." I stood there, frozen. Surely I had misheard. Surely my own daughter wasn't telling me I wasn't family. The cold December wind cut through my coat, but I barely felt it. All I felt was the ice forming around my heart. "Sarah, I drove 7 hours. I have presents for the children." "Mom, I can't deal with this right now. You should have called first. You should have asked. You can't just show up unannounced." But I hadn't shown up unannounced. Had I? Or had I misunderstood everything? Had I been so desperate for connection that I'd imagined an invitation that was never extended? Through the window, I saw Emma peek around the corner, saw her little face light up. "Grandma," she started to say, but Sarah quickly shut the door, not slammed, but firmly, definitively closed. I stood on that porch for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds. The shopping bags suddenly felt impossibly heavy. The gingerbread cookies I'd made with so much love felt like stones in my hands. I turned around and walked back to my car. I didn't cry. I didn't knock again. I simply left, with as much dignity as I could muster. What had just happened? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? I drove back to my hotel in a fog. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white, but I couldn't feel them. I couldn't feel anything except a hollow emptiness spreading through my chest like frost across a window. The hotel room was small, generic, with beige walls and a painting of a lighthouse that meant nothing. I set the shopping bags on the bed. All those carefully chosen presents, all that wasted hope. And finally, I allowed myself to break. I cried. Not the gentle tears of sadness, but the deep, wrenching sobs of someone who has lost something fundamental. I had lost my daughter. No, worse. I had never really had her at all, had I? When had I become so disposable? When had I stopped being family? I lay awake all night, replaying every conversation, every interaction from the past year, the past 5 years, searching for clues I'd missed. The pattern was there, clear as day once I stopped making excuses for her. The shortened phone calls, the canceled visits, the way she'd stopped saying, "I love you," at the end of our conversations. The way Derek had looked at me, not with surprise, but with barely concealed contempt, as if he'd been expecting this confrontation, waiting for it. By dawn, something had shifted inside me. The grief was still there, but underneath it, something harder had formed. Resolve. I was 67 years old. I had survived my husband's death, raised a child alone, worked myself to exhaustion to give that child every opportunity. I had never been weak. I had never been someone who simply accepted mistreatment. I wasn't going to start now. I sat up in bed as Christmas morning light filtered through the curtains. I needed information. I needed to understand what had happened to my daughter, why she had changed so completely. People didn't transform overnight. Something or someone had influenced her. I opened my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I searched for my daughter and son-in-law on social media. I'd always respected their privacy, never pried into their online lives. That respect had been a mistake. Sarah's Facebook page was locked down, but Derek's was partially public. I scrolled through his posts, his photos, his comments, and there, in the casual cruelty of digital footprints, I found my first clue. A post from 6 months ago finally convinced S that boundaries with toxic family members are healthy. Fresh start for 2026. Comments from friends congratulating him, praising him for protecting his family. Toxic family members. He meant me. Derek had been poisoning my daughter against me. I kept digging, my nurse's training serving me well, methodical, thorough, unemotional. I found posts in a father's forum where Derek complained about intrusive in-laws and emotional manipulation. He described someone who sounded nothing like me, someone demanding, controlling, guilt-tripping. He'd created a fictional version of me, and Sarah had believed it. Or had she? Did she truly believe I was toxic, or was she simply choosing her husband over her mother? Either way, the result was the same. I had been erased from their narrative, from their family. By noon, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead for scraps of affection from people who viewed me as an inconvenience. But I also wasn't going to disappear quietly, to let them rewrite history without consequence. I had rights. As a grandmother, I had legal rights to see Emma and James. Many states had grandparent visitation laws. I would need to research Connecticut's specific statutes. But this was a start, a direction. More importantly, I needed to document everything: the rejection, the posts, the pattern of alienation. If this escalated, and I suspected it would need evidence that I had been a loving, appropriate grandmother who had been unjustly cut off from her grandchildren. I took out a notebook and began writing down every detail I could remember: dates, times, conversations. I screenshotted Derek's posts before he could delete them. I gathered every birthday card I'd sent that had gone unacknowledged, every gift receipt, every proof that I had tried to maintain a relationship. I called my friend Patricia back home, a retired social worker. "Pat," I said when she answered, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need your advice about something." As I told her what had happened, as I laid out my plan to fight for my right to see my grandchildren, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: power, purpose. The determination that had gotten me through my husband's death, through single motherhood, through every challenge life had thrown at me. Sarah and Derek had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated me. They thought I would simply fade away, accept their rejection, disappear from their lives without resistance. They were wrong. 2 days after Christmas, I sat in the office of Amanda Chen, a family law attorney, whose name Patricia had given me. The office was small but professional, with diplomas on the wall and family photos on the desk. A woman who understood what family meant. "Tell me everything," Amanda said, her pen poised over a legal pad. I did. I spoke calmly, factually, laying out the timeline of events. Amanda took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Connecticut does have grandparent visitation statutes," she said. "But I'll be honest with you, Margaret. These cases are difficult. The law generally favors parental rights. We'd need to prove that visitation with you is in the best interests of the children and that the denial of access is harming them." "I understand," I said. "What's the first step?" "We send a formal letter to Sarah and Derek requesting scheduled visitation and explaining that you're prepared to file a petition with the court if they refuse. Sometimes that's enough to bring people to the table." I nodded. "Send the letter." Amanda's eyebrows rose slightly. "You're certain?" "Once we take this step, relationships often become more strained, not less. Some grandparents prefer to wait, to try reconciliation first." "I stood on my daughter's porch on Christmas Eve and was told I wasn't family," I interrupted, my voice harder than I intended. "The relationship is already strained beyond repair. I'm not trying to reconcile with Sarah. I'm trying to maintain a relationship with my grandchildren before they forget I exist." Amanda studied me for a moment, then nodded with what looked like respect. "I'll draft the letter today." The letter was sent via certified mail on December 28th. I knew the moment Sarah received it because my phone rang at 8:47 p.m. that evening. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened to the message, Sarah's voice was shaking with fury. "How dare you? How dare you threaten us with lawyers? This is exactly why we cut you off, Mom. You're manipulative, you're controlling, and now you're trying to use the legal system to force your way into our lives. Derek was right about you. He was right about everything." I saved the voicemail, evidence. The next call came from a number I didn't recognize. I answered this time. "Mrs. Morrison?" A man's voice, smooth and cold. "Derek, this is completely unacceptable. You're harassing our family. If you continue with this ridiculous legal action, you'll never see Emma or James again. Do you understand me?" "Never." "I understand that you've spent months poisoning my daughter against me," I replied calmly. "I understand that you've systematically isolated her from her mother. I understand that you're threatening me right now, which, by the way, I'm recording." I wasn't actually recording, but the silence on the other end told me the bluff had worked. "You have no idea what you're doing," Derek said finally. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Neither do you, I said, and hung up. The real breakthrough came 3 days later. An email arrived from an address I didn't recognize. Email protected. The subject line read, "You should know the truth about Derek." I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me open it. "Mrs. Morrison, my name is Rachel Montgomery. I was married to Derek Sutherland from 2008 to 2012. I saw your name in a local news posting about grandparent rights cases and recognized his name. I don't know if this will help you, but I think you should know what kind of man your daughter married. Derek has a pattern. He isolates his partners from their families and friends. He did it to me. It took me 3 years to escape that marriage and another 2 years of therapy to understand what he'd done. He convinced me my parents were toxic, that my friends were jealous, that he was the only person who truly loved me. By the time I realized what was happening, I'd lost almost everyone. I tried to warn your daughter when I heard they were engaged. I sent her a Facebook message. She blocked me. Derek probably told her I was a crazy ex. If you're fighting for access to your grandchildren, you're fighting the right battle. Those kids need someone outside Derek's control to remember who they really are. I'm willing to testify if you need me. I'm attaching documentation of the restraining order I had to file against Derek during our divorce and records from my therapist about the parental alienation he attempted with my father. Good luck. You're going to need it. The attachments were extensive. Police reports, court documents, therapy records with Derek's name prominently featured, describing classic patterns of coercive control and familial isolation. I sat back in my chair, my hands trembling. This wasn't just about me. This was bigger. Derek was an abuser, not physical, but psychological. And Sarah was his victim. My daughter wasn't cruel, she was controlled. This changed everything. I forwarded the entire email chain to Amanda Chen with a simple message. We have our evidence. By evening, Amanda had called me back, her voice urgent and excited. Margaret, this is exactly what we needed. This establishes a pattern of behavior. This changes our petition from a simple grandparent rights case to a child welfare concern. What do we do next? I asked. We file, immediately. And we prepare for war because once Derek sees what we have, he's going to come at us with everything he has. Let him come, I said. I was ready. The petition was filed on January 6th. Connecticut Superior Court, Family Division. Margaret Morrison versus Sarah and Derek Sutherland. Petition for grandparent visitation rights. The document was 23 pages long, meticulously detailing the history of my relationship with my grandchildren, the sudden and unexplained denial of access, and, most damningly, the evidence of Derek's pattern of familial alienation with his previous wife. Amanda had been thorough. We requested supervised visitation to start 2 hours every other Saturday, gradually increasing if all went well. We weren't asking for custody. We weren't trying to tear the family apart. We were simply asking for what grandparents across the country had, the right to know their grandchildren. The court date was set for February 12th, 6 weeks away. Derek's response came much sooner. 4 days after we filed, I was at home when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a process server handing me an envelope. Derek and Sarah were countersuing, claiming I was engaging in harassment and demanding a restraining order to keep me away from their property and their children. I read through the allegations with growing disbelief. According to their filing, I had shown up uninvited and refused to leave their property, made threatening phone calls, stalked them online, attempted to turn their children against them through inappropriate gifts and communications, caused Emma emotional distress requiring counseling. Every word was either a distortion or an outright lie. But I understood the strategy. They were trying to paint me as unstable, dangerous. If they could get a restraining order, our petition would be dead in the water. That evening, my phone rang. Sarah. Again, I didn't answer. The voicemail she left was different this time. Not angry, but pleading, desperate. Mom, please, please drop this lawsuit. You're tearing our family apart. Emma is having nightmares. James cries and asks why Grandma is trying to take him away. Is this really what you want? To traumatize your grandchildren? Derek and I are willing to forget everything if you just stop this. We can work something out, but not like this. Not through lawyers and courts. Please, Mom, I'm begging you. My hand shook as I held the phone. Was I traumatizing them? Was I making things worse? No. I forced myself to think clearly. Emma and James weren't having nightmares because of me. They were having nightmares because their parents were telling them lies, using them as weapons. This was manipulation, another one of Derek's tactics. The next attack came at my workplace. I had returned to part-time nursing at a local clinic after retirement, more for the social connection than the money. On January 11th, my supervisor called me into her office, her expression uncomfortable. Margaret, we've received a complaint about you, she said carefully. A complaint? From whom? A Derek Sutherland. He claims to be your son-in-law. He's alleging that you've been unstable lately, that you're involved in a difficult family situation that's affecting your mental health. He's concerned about your ability to provide patient care safely. I felt heat rise in my face. He contacted my employer? He said he was worried about you. He asked if we'd noticed any behavioral changes, any signs of confusion or aggression. And have you? I asked coldly. My supervisor met my eyes. No, Margaret. You've been nothing but professional, as always. That's why I'm telling you about this instead of acting on it. But I need you to be aware that he's trying to build a case that you're mentally incompetent. Thank you for telling me, I said, and for trusting your own judgment rather than the word of a stranger. That weekend, Derek and Sarah showed up at my house. I watched through the window as they got out of their expensive SUV, Sarah carrying what looked like a gift basket. A peace offering? Or another trap? I opened the door but didn't invite them in. What do you want? Mom, please, Sarah said, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. Can we talk? Really talk? Derek put his hand on her shoulder, a gesture that looked supportive but felt possessive. We want to resolve this, Margaret. We've been thinking about what you said, about wanting to see the kids. Maybe we overreacted. Maybe, I repeated. Emotions were high at Christmas, Derek continued smoothly. We all said things we didn't mean. Sarah was stressed. I was protective of her. But we don't want lawyers and courts involved. That's not good for anyone, especially not Emma and James. So, you're willing to agree to regular visitation? I asked. We're willing to discuss it, Derek said. But first you need to drop the petition. Show us good faith. Then we can work out an arrangement privately. I looked at my daughter. She wouldn't meet my eyes. No, I said. Derek's mask slipped for just a second. I saw the flash of rage before he controlled it. You're making a mistake. I've already made my mistakes, I said. I trusted you. I believed you when you said Sarah was just busy. I let you erase me from my grandchildren's lives without fighting back. I won't make those mistakes again. You'll regret this, Derek said quietly. Probably, I agreed. But I'll regret doing nothing even more. They left. I watched them drive away, Sarah's face turned toward the window, Derek's jaw tight with fury. I closed the door and slid down against it, suddenly exhausted. My whole body was shaking. I'd stood up to them, yes, but at what cost? What would they do next? I gave myself permission to rest. For 3 days, I took time off work. I slept. I cried. I talked to Patricia for hours on the phone. I let myself feel the fear, the grief, the overwhelming weight of what I was fighting against. But by the 4th day, I was ready again. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. The email arrived on January 18th, marked urgent, with a subject line that read, One last chance to make this right. Dear Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking since we came to your house. I realize now that I've been unfair to you. Derek helped me see that I've been holding on to resentments from childhood, stupid things that don't matter anymore. The truth is, I miss you. Emma and James ask about you constantly. I want to fix this. I want my children to know their grandmother. But I can't do that while there's a lawsuit hanging over our heads. It makes everything adversarial when it should be about love and family. If you drop the petition, I promise, I genuinely promise, that we'll set up regular visits. First Sunday of every month to start, then more frequently once we rebuild trust. We can even put it in writing if that makes you more comfortable. But please, Mom, let's handle this as a family, not as enemies in court. Derek fully supports this. He's admitted that he was overprotective and wrong to encourage me to cut you off. He wants to make amends too. Please, Mom, this is a real offer, but the lawsuit has to end first. You have to show us that you're willing to trust us again. I love you. I never stopped loving you, Sarah. I read the email 3 times. Parts of it sounded like my daughter, the cadence, certain phrases. But other parts sounded like Derek's smooth manipulation. Derek helped me see. Derek fully supports this. Always Derek's presence, his influence, even in what was supposed to be Sarah's personal plea. I wanted to believe it. God, how I wanted to believe it. What if this was real? What if I could have my daughter back, my grandchildren back, without the ugliness of court battles? I picked up the phone to call Amanda, then set it back down. What was I doing? Was I really going to throw away a chance at reconciliation because I was too proud, too stubborn to accept an olive branch? I forwarded the email to Patricia instead. Her response came within an hour. Don't you dare. This is classic abuser behavior. Promise reconciliation if the victim drops legal protection, then renege once the threat is gone. Call your lawyer. Do not respond to Sarah. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing and feeling were different things. I called Amanda. I received an email from Sarah, I said, and read it to her. Don't respond, Amanda said immediately. This is a trap, Margaret. If you drop the petition, you'll have zero leverage. Any promise they make will be unenforceable. They can cut you off again the moment the case is dismissed. What if I propose a legally binding agreement first? I asked. Before dropping the petition? You can try, Amanda said, but I guarantee they'll find a reason to reject it. They don't want an agreement, Margaret. They want you to go away. I sat in silence, wrestling with hope and experience. Do you want me to respond on your behalf? Amanda offered. No, I said finally. I'll handle it. I drafted my response carefully, professionally, without emotion. Dear Sarah, I appreciate your email and your willingness to consider reconciliation. Family means everything to me, as you know. I would be happy to discuss dismissing the petition in exchange for a court-approved settlement agreement that guarantees regular visitation. This protects everyone. It ensures that I can see Emma and James, and it provides you with clear boundaries and structure. My attorney can draft this document, and we can all sign it before the court date. If you're sincere about wanting to resolve this, a formal agreement should be acceptable. It's simply putting your promises in writing. Please let me know if you'd like to proceed this way. Mom. The response came within 2 hours. From Derek's email, not Sarah's. Margaret. The fact that you're unwilling to show good faith tells us everything we need to know. You claim to want a relationship with your grandchildren, but you refuse to trust their parents. You're more interested in control than in love. Our offer is withdrawn. We'll see you in court. I stared at the email, feeling cold certainty settle over me. There it was, the mask removed. They had never intended to reconcile. They'd wanted me to drop my legal protection so they could slam the door in my face again, this time with no recourse. I had made the right choice. That evening, I attended a support group for grandparents, dealing with alienation. Patricia had found it for me. A small gathering at a local community center. 8 grandparents, all fighting variations of the same battle I was fighting. "They promise you the world if you just back off," said Tom, a 72-year-old grandfather who hadn't seen his granddaughter in 3 years. "Then the minute you relent, they ghost you again. It's all about control." "Mine tried to get me fired from my job," added Linda, a woman around my age. "Said I was unstable, dangerous, sent letters to my employer, my church, my neighbors. It's a scorched earth campaign." As I listened to their stories, I realized something profound. I wasn't alone. This wasn't personal failure or bad luck. This was a pattern, a recognized form of family abuse that destroyed grandparent-grandchild bonds for reasons that had nothing to do with the grandparents' behavior. "How do you keep going?" I asked. "How do you not give up?" "Because giving up means they win," said Margaret. Yes, another Margaret. "It means those children grow up believing we didn't love them enough to fight for them. I refuse to let that be the legacy I leave." I nodded, feeling strength return. These people understood. They had been where I was, and they had survived. After the meeting, Linda approached me. "I saw your petition filing," she said. "You have Rachel Montgomery's testimony, Derek's ex-wife." "Yes. Do you know her?" "She's in our sister group in Hartford. She's been through hell, but she's strong, and her testimony will matter. Judges don't like seeing patterns of alienation behavior." "Do you think we have a chance?" I asked. Linda squeezed my hand. "I think you're doing everything right. Document everything, don't engage in their drama, let the evidence speak. That's all you can do." Over the next week, Derek and Sarah went quiet. No calls, no emails, no confrontations. The silence was unnerving. I kept waiting for the next attack. "They're regrouping," Amanda explained during a phone call. "Probably consulting with their attorney, figuring out their strategy. This quiet period is normal. They're watching to see what you'll do next." "What should I do next?" "Exactly what you've been doing. Live your life, don't give them ammunition. And prepare your testimony for February 12th. We need you calm, credible, sympathetic." I could do that. I had spent my entire nursing career remaining calm under pressure. I could maintain that composure for 6 more weeks. But at night, alone in my house, I allowed myself to feel the grief. Not just for my lost relationship with Sarah, but for the grandmother I should have been able to be. For the birthday parties I was missing, the school plays, the everyday moments that make up a childhood. Emma was 7 now. James was 4. They were growing up without me. Even if I won this case, I had already lost precious time. Time I could never get back, but I would fight for the time that remained. For every future moment I could share with them, I would fight. Derek and Sarah might be watching, waiting, planning their next move. Let them watch, let them plan. I wasn't backing down. They came on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks before the court date. I was making dinner, chicken soup, the same recipe I used to make for Sarah when she was sick, when headlights swept across my living room window. The expensive SUV again, but this time they had the children with them. My heart lurched. Emma, James. I could see their small silhouettes in the back seat. Why had they brought them? I opened the door as Derek and Sarah approached, Emma holding Sarah's hand, James in Derek's arms. The children looked confused, tired. It was past their bedtime. "Hello, Grandma," Emma said tentatively, as if unsure whether she was allowed to speak to me. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, my voice catching. I reached out to touch her hair, but Sarah pulled her back slightly. "We need to talk," Derek said. "Can we come in?" Everything in me screamed this was wrong, but how could I refuse with my grandchildren standing there? Of course. They entered my home like invaders claiming territory. Derek looked around with barely concealed disdain. at my modest furniture, my lived-in space, so different from their pristine Connecticut showcase. Sarah kept the children close, as if I might contaminate them. "Kids, go sit on the couch," Derek instructed. "Mommy and I need to talk to Grandma." Emma and James obediently went to the couch, but Emma kept glancing at me with huge, worried eyes. What had they told her? What poison had they dripped into her young mind? "We came to give you one more chance," Derek began, his voice taking on that smooth, reasonable tone that I'd learned to recognize as his manipulation mode. "We've thought about this very carefully, and we've decided we're willing to let you be part of the children's lives." "Let me?" I repeated quietly. "But there are conditions," Sarah added quickly. "Rules that you have to follow." Derek pulled out a folded paper from his pocket. "We've written them down. First, you only see the children when we're present. No unsupervised visits, ever. Second, you don't discuss this lawsuit or anything negative about us with them. Third, you follow our parenting rules exactly. No sugar, no screens, no gifts without our pre-approval. Fourth, visits only happen at our home, never here. And fifth, this is the most important one. You drop the petition immediately and sign a document promising never to pursue legal action against us again." I took the paper from him, scanning the typed list. 9 rules total, each one designed to erase my autonomy, to make me a puppet they could control. "And if I don't agree?" I asked. "Then you'll never see Emma or James again," Derek said flatly. "We'll fight your petition with everything we have. We'll expose you as a bitter, vindictive woman trying to destroy her daughter's family. We have witnesses who will testify about your obsessive behavior, your instability, your inappropriate boundary violations." "What witnesses?" I asked. "What boundary violations?" "That doesn't matter," Sarah said, but her voice wavered. She couldn't meet my eyes. "What matters is that you have a choice. You can have a relationship with your grandchildren under our terms, or you can have nothing." I looked at Emma, who was watching us with frightened eyes. She was 7 years old and already being taught that love came with conditions, that relationships were about power and control. "No," I said simply. Derek's face darkened. "No? I won't sign this. I won't agree to be controlled and monitored like a criminal when I've done nothing wrong. And I won't teach my grandchildren that this is what family looks like." "You ungrateful," Derek started, but Sarah put a hand on his arm. "Mom, please," Sarah said. And for a moment, I heard my real daughter in her voice. "Please just sign it. It's not that bad. You get to see them. Isn't that what you wanted?" "I want them to know they have a grandmother who loves them enough to fight for them," I said. "Not a grandmother who can be bullied into silence." "You're choosing your pride over your grandchildren," Sarah said, tears starting to fall. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of frustrated rage. "You're choosing lawyers and courts over your own family." "You chose your husband over your mother," I replied. "You chose to believe his lies rather than remember the woman who raised you." "Who made the choice, Sarah?" Derek grabbed Emma's hand roughly. "We're leaving. James, come here." "But I wanted to show Grandma my drawing," Emma protested. "Now, Emma." Derek's voice was sharp enough that both children flinched. As they herded the children toward the door, Derek turned back to me. "You're going to lose everything," he said, his voice low and venomous. "I'm going to make sure that court sees you for what you really are. A jealous, controlling woman who can't accept that she's not needed anymore. We're going to bury you." "Get out of my house," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Sarah paused in the doorway, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't read. Hatred? Regret? Fear? "You had your chance, Mom," she whispered. "You had so many chances." Then they were gone. the door slamming behind them with such force that a picture frame fell off my wall and shattered. I stood in my living room, surrounded by broken glass and shattered illusions, and I let myself shake. Let myself feel the fear that Derek's threats had ignited. He was right about one thing. He could make my life very difficult. He had resources, connections, the ability to create a false narrative that people might believe. But he was wrong about something crucial. I wasn't fighting for pride. I was fighting for Emma and James, for the right of children to know all the people who loved them, for the principle that abuse shouldn't be rewarded with silence. I picked up my phone and called Amanda. "They just came to my house," I said. "They brought the children as props. They tried to blackmail me into dropping the case." "Did you record it?" "No, but I can write down everything they said while it's fresh." "Do that immediately. Every detail, every threat. This is witness intimidation, Margaret. They just made a serious mistake." As I hung up and began writing, I realized something. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Yes, I was afraid. But fear and determination weren't mutually exclusive. If anything, their visit had clarified everything. They were desperate. People who are winning don't show up at their opponent's house with ultimatums and threats. They don't bring children to emotional ambushes. They had revealed their weakness tonight, their panic that they might actually lose control. I wrote for 2 hours, documenting every word I could remember. Then I made copies and locked them in my safe deposit box at the bank the next morning. 3 weeks until court. 3 weeks until Derek and Sarah would face questions under oath. Let them be angry. Let them plot and scheme. I was ready for war. February 12th arrived with gray skies and bitter cold. I dressed carefully. A navy blue suit that looked professional, but not expensive. Minimal jewelry. My hair pulled back neatly. Amanda had coached me. "You need to look like the competent, stable grandmother you are. Maternal but not soft. Strong but not aggressive." The courthouse was an imposing brick building in downtown Hartford. As I climbed the steps, I saw Derek and Sarah with their attorney, a tall man in an expensive suit who looked like he charged $500 an hour. Derek wore his most charming smile, the one I now recognized as a mask. Sarah looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Winters presiding. Judge Winters was a black woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every lie family court had to offer. She looked at the case file, then at both parties. "This is a petition for grandparent visitation rights," she said. "I've reviewed the initial filings. Ms. Chen, you may present your opening statement." Amanda stood, composed and professional. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case. Mrs. Morrison is a loving grandmother who maintained an active relationship with her grandchildren until approximately 1 year ago, when her access was suddenly and completely terminated without cause. We will demonstrate that this termination was not due to any failure on Mrs. Morrison's part, but rather represents a pattern of familial alienation by the children's father, Derek Sutherland." Derek's attorney, Mr. Harrison, stood immediately after. "Your Honor, this is not about alienation. This is about a grandmother who refused to respect boundaries, who showed up uninvited at her daughter's home, and who is now using the legal system to harass her family. The parents have every right to determine who has access to their children." "Mrs. Morrison, please take the stand," Judge Winters said. I walked to the witness stand with steady steps. I had been terrified of this moment. But now that it was here, I felt calm. Clear. Amanda led me through my testimony. I described my relationship with Emma and James, the weekly video calls when they were babies, the visits, the birthday presents, the bedtime stories I used to read. I described Sarah's gradual withdrawal, the shortened phone calls, the excuses. Then I described Christmas Eve. I rang the doorbell, I said, my voice steady. Sarah opened the door. When she saw me, she asked who had invited me. I told her I thought she had, when she mentioned they were having Christmas at home. She said, "This holiday is for family only. You need to leave." How did that make you feel? Amanda asked. Like I'd been erased, I said simply. Like 28 years of being her mother meant nothing. Mr. Harrison cross-examined me aggressively. Isn't it true, Mrs. Morrison, that you showed up without confirming you were invited? I believed I had an implicit invitation. A yes or no question, please. Did you call to confirm? No, but... And isn't it true that you've since hired a lawyer to harass my clients? Objection, Amanda said, argumentative. Sustained, Judge Winters said sharply. Mr. Harrison, rephrase. But the damage was minimal. Judge Winters looked unimpressed with his theatrics. Then Amanda called Rachel Montgomery to the stand. Rachel was a slight woman with dark hair and determined eyes. She spoke clearly, calmly, devastatingly. Derek isolated me from my family systematically, she testified. He would tell me things my parents supposedly said, cruel things that I later learned were fabrications. He monitored my phone calls, read my emails. When my father tried to visit, Derek claimed he was triggering my anxiety and convinced me to cut off contact. Did you eventually recognize this as abuse? Amanda asked. Yes. It took therapy, but I came to understand that Derek was using recognized patterns of coercive control. Isolating the victim from support systems is textbook. Objection. Mr. Harrison was on his feet. The witness is not a psychologist. She's testifying about her own experience, Amanda countered, which was documented by licensed professionals. I'll allow it, Judge Winters said. Continue. Rachel looked directly at Derek. I tried to warn Sarah. I sent her a message when they got engaged. I told her to be careful, to watch for these patterns. Derek must have seen it because I was immediately blocked. Derek's face had gone red. Sarah was staring at her hands. When Derek took the stand, his composure began to crack almost immediately. Mr. Sutherland, why did you terminate Mrs. Morrison's access to the children? Amanda asked. She was becoming obsessive, Derek said, calling constantly, showing up uninvited. How often did she call? Multiple times a week. The phone records show she called once a week at the same time for approximately 20 minutes. Is that what you consider obsessive? Derek shifted. It's not about frequency, it's about the content. She was trying to undermine our parenting. Can you give an example? She would question our decisions, second-guess us. That's not an example, Mr. Sutherland. Give me one specific instance where Mrs. Morrison undermined your parenting. He couldn't. He fumbled, contradicted himself, finally snapped, "She wouldn't respect that we needed space. She wouldn't accept that she's not the parent here. So you decided she should have no relationship with her grandchildren at all. If someone can't respect boundaries, they can't be around my children." Even though those boundaries meant erasing their grandmother from their lives entirely? Yes. The courtroom went quiet. Judge Winters leaned forward. Mr. Sutherland, she said, are you saying that any disagreement with parenting choices justifies complete termination of a grandparent relationship? I'm saying that I have the right to protect my family from toxic influences. Toxic? Judge Winters' eyebrows rose. Mrs. Morrison appears to have been a consistent, loving presence in these children's lives for 7 years. What makes her toxic? Derek's face flushed darker. She's manipulative. She's trying to control us through this lawsuit. This lawsuit was filed after you terminated her access, Judge Winters pointed out. You can hardly use it as retroactive justification. Sarah was called next. She looked terrified, trapped. Under Amanda's gentle but persistent questioning, the truth emerged in fragments. Did your mother ever harm your children? No, but did she ever violate your explicit parenting rules? Not exactly, but she didn't always. Did you make your decision to cut off contact, or did your husband influence that decision? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Derek, who gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. We decided together. Mrs. Sutherland, look at me, not your husband, Judge Winters said sharply. This is a court of law. You answer truthfully. Did you want to cut your mother off completely, or did your husband convince you it was necessary? A long, terrible silence. He convinced me, Sarah whispered finally. He said she was toxic, that we needed clear boundaries, that I had to choose between my husband and my mother. Tears streamed down her face. I chose my husband. The mask had cracked. The truth was finally visible. Judge Winters took a 15-minute recess before delivering her ruling. When we returned, her expression was stern. I have presided over family court for 18 years, she began. I have seen countless disputes over grandparent visitation. Most involve genuine conflicts of values or legitimate concerns. This is not one of those cases. Derek's attorney started to stand, but Judge Winters held up a hand. What I witnessed today was deeply troubling. Mrs. Morrison presented evidence of a consistent, appropriate relationship with her grandchildren. You presented vague accusations without concrete examples. Furthermore, Mrs. Sutherland admitted under oath that she was convinced by her husband to cut off contact, rather than making an independent decision. This court takes allegations of coercive control very seriously, especially when supported by testimony about Mr. Sutherland's previous marriage showing identical patterns. Derek's jaw clenched. Sarah had gone pale. The petition is granted. My heart leaped. Amanda squeezed my hand. Mrs. Morrison is awarded visitation as follows. Every other weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Alternating holidays. 1 week during summer vacation. All visitation unsupervised. Additionally, twice weekly video calls and the right to send cards and gifts without parental approval. Your Honor, this is excessive, Mr. Harrison protested. I'm not finished, Judge Winters said coldly. I am ordering family therapy for the Sutherlands and counseling for Emma to process the confusing messages about her grandmother. I'm flagging this case for Family Services Review to ensure the children aren't being subjected to parental alienation. If such alienation is found, this court will consider modification of custody arrangements. The threat was clear. Continue this behavior, and you could lose your children entirely. Finally, all legal fees incurred by Mrs. Morrison are to be paid by the respondents, as I find their denial of access was made in bad faith. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through my entire body. Case concluded, visitation begins this Saturday. Outside the courthouse, I stood in the cold February air and cried tears of relief. Victory. Justice. Amanda hugged me tightly. You did it! Through the courthouse doors, Derek was arguing violently with his attorney, his face contorted with rage. Sarah looked broken, lost. Rachel Montgomery approached, smiling. Congratulations, Margaret, you gave them hell. Thank you for testifying. You saved this case. We protect each other, Rachel said. That's what survivors do. Saturday morning, the court monitor brought Emma and James to my door. Sarah's car idled at the curb, but she didn't get out. Grandma, Emma ran to me. I missed you so much. James hugged me tightly. We had 8 hours together. 8 hours to begin rebuilding what had been broken. At 5 p.m., Emma asked, Can we come back next week? Every 2 weeks, I said. Forever. Forever? James asked. Forever, I confirmed. Derek and Sarah had lost their power over me. I had won. Spring arrived with unexpected gentleness. By April, Emma and James were coming every other weekend like clockwork, and our video calls had become cherished routines. The supervised visits ended after 1 month. Susan's report was glowing. I had reclaimed my identity as a grandmother. We visited parks, baked together, worked on art projects. I taught Emma how to garden. James helped me make cookies. The photo albums were revelations. Mommy was little like me? Emma asked, staring at pictures of Sarah at 7. She was exactly like you, I confirmed. Meanwhile, Derek and Sarah's life unraveled. The Family Services report was damning. Emma shows signs of anxiety related to family tensions. She expresses confusion about her grandmother and has internalized messaging that loving her grandmother might be disloyal to her parents. Both children would benefit from ongoing therapy. In late March, Derek posted a vitriolic social media rant about judicial overreach and biased judges. The post was reported to Judge Winters. She held him in contempt, fined him $5,000, and warned that further attempts to undermine the court or alienate the children would result in custody modification. Derek's employer, a prestigious financial firm, somehow learned about the case. In April, Derek was asked to resign for poor judgment affecting the firm's reputation. Without his substantial income, their expensive lifestyle became impossible. Sarah called in May, asking for money. "We're struggling. Derek lost his job. We might have to sell the house." "No," I said simply. "Mom, please." "You told me I wasn't family, Sarah. Those choices have consequences." She hung up. By summer, they'd sold their house at a loss and moved into a cramped rental. Derek took a job paying half his previous salary. Their marriage was fracturing. They fought constantly. Sarah had started therapy and was beginning to recognize the patterns of control that had defined her marriage. Meanwhile, my life bloomed. Emma and James thrived. Emma's anxiety decreased. The 6-month review was glowing. I joined a book club, volunteered at the library, traveled with Patricia. On Emma's 8th birthday, she blew out her candles at my house and said, "I wish that we could have every birthday here with you, Grandma." My heart broke and healed simultaneously. Derek and Sarah's attempt to erase me had failed completely. I had won more than visitation rights. I had won my grandchildren's hearts. Looking back, this story isn't about me winning or Sarah losing. It's about children who deserve to know they were loved and standing up for what's right, even when it hurts. I learned that family isn't just blood, it's consistent presence, unconditional support, and the courage to fight for connection. Would I do it all again? Yes, without hesitation. Because Emma and James know their grandmother loved them enough to fight for them. If you're facing something similar, remember this: silence is complicity. Accepting mistreatment teaches everyone that mistreatment is acceptable. You deserve better. Your grandchildren deserve better. Fight for what matters. What would you have done in my situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more real-life stories of courage and family. Thank you for listening. Remember, you're stronger than you think.